Chapter 1, The Silence. Before creation, before the first God learned his own name, the universe did not speak. It did not whisper, did not hum, did not breathe. There was no darkness because there was no light to be absent from.
No stillness either, because stillness requires something to stop moving.
There was only none, the endless, undifferentiated waters. Not a sea, not an ocean, not even a void, a condition.
A state?
Existence without shape or memory. Nun did not wait because waiting requires time, and time had not yet arrived. Within this immeasurable expanse, there was no up or down, no before or after.
Nothing drifted, nothing sank, nothing rose.
Potential lay folded inward, like a thought never finished, like a breath held so long it forgets it was ever meant to be released. If consciousness existed here, it did not observe. If awareness existed, it did not judge. None simply was, and then impossibly difference appeared. Not movement.
Not sound.
Difference. A subtle tension formed in the waters, as though the endless sameness had become aware of itself.
Not bored. Not lonely.
Aware. The kind of awareness that precedes identity. The kind that does not ask questions yet, but senses that questions could exist. From this tension, the first change occurred. A mound rose from the waters, not forced upward, not shaped by hands. It emerged because emergence had become possible. This was the Benben, the first place, the first distinction. The first statement that said, "Here is something." The Benben did not tower or glow. It was not dramatic. It simply stood above the waters, dry and defined, a point of certainty in an infinite unknown. And upon it stood Atum. Atum was not born. Birth implies a process, a lineage, a before and after. Atum had none of that.
He came into being because being had become necessary.
He was self-created, self-contained, and complete in a way nothing else had ever been. He did not arrive with thunder. He did not announce himself. He stood upon the Benben and became the axis around which reality would eventually turn. Atum looked out over Nun, and for the first time the universe was observed. This was the first act of creation, observation. Atum saw the waters stretching endlessly in all directions, and within that seeing, he became aware of solitude, not pain,
not sorrow.
Simply the recognition that nothing else stood with him. This recognition was powerful, because from it came intention. Atum did not decide to create out of need or fear. He created because awareness naturally seeks expression. A thought unspoken presses outward. A breath held longs to be released.
Atum inhaled.
And with that breath, the universe leaned forward.
Atum saw the waters stretching endlessly in all directions, and within that seeing, he became aware of solitude. Not pain, not sorrow. Simply the recognition that nothing else stood with him. This recognition was powerful, because from it came intention. Atum did not decide to create out of need or fear. He created because awareness naturally seeks expression. A thought unspoken presses outward. A breath held longs to be released. Atum inhaled. And with that breath, the universe leaned forward. From Atum's own essence, he brought forth Shu, the god of air. Shu was light, invisible, and restless. He was space itself, the ability for things to be apart without losing connection. Shu did not stand still. He moved, not because he was impatient, but because movement was his nature. From the moisture of that same breath came Tefnut, goddess of balance, moisture, and order. Where Shu created space, Tefnut tempered it. She was dew on leaves, mist in the morning, the quiet pressure that prevents things from tearing themselves apart. They were not children in the way humans understand children. They were extensions, principles given form, and yet they were distinct, independent, alive. With Shu and Tefnut, the universe learned relationship. Atum watched them move into the formless expanse, shaping it simply by existing within it. Where Shu passed, space stretched. Where Tefnut followed, balance settled. But the universe was vast, and even gods can drift. Shu and Tefnut wandered too far into the unshaped waters and were lost to Adam's sight. Not destroyed, not erased, simply beyond perception. For the first time since creation began, Adam felt fear. Not terror, not panic. Fear as in the understanding that something precious could be absent. Adam searched, and in his searching, his eye detached itself, becoming an independent force sent to find what was missing. This eye was fierce, luminous, and unblinking. It scoured the dark waters, driven by Adam's will. While the eye searched, Adam waited. And in waiting, he wept. The tears fell upon the Ben, and where they touched the dry earth, they transformed. From them arose the first humans. Small, fragile, bewildered beings, born not of design, but of emotion. They did not yet know their purpose. They simply existed, as Adam once had. When Shu and Tefnut were finally found and returned, Adam rejoiced. His eye, having completed its task, returned as well, now powerful beyond its original form. This eye would later be known as Ra, the blazing sun, guardian of order and destroyer of threats. The universe had learned its second lesson. Loss creates longing. Longing creates life. And creation continued. When Shu and Tefnut returned from the far reaches of the formless waters, the universe did not celebrate with sound. There were no drums, no cries of triumph, no clashing cymbals of victory. Creation, still young, did not yet know how to make noise for joy. Instead, balance settled quietly, like dust falling back into place after a long disturbance. Shu resumed his wandering, stretching space wherever he moved. He was light, but not weak, invisible, but not absent. Wherever he passed, things could exist without pressing against one another. Without Shu, there could be no distance, and without distance, nothing could be seen clearly. Tefnut followed him, not behind and not ahead, but alongside. She was the moisture in the air, the gentle pressure that softened extremes. Where Shu expanded, she tempered. Where space grew thin and brittle, she restored cohesion. Together, they were equilibrium in motion. From their union came new life. Not suddenly, not dramatically, slowly, as the universe learned how to carry weight. Their children were Geb and Nut. Geb emerged first, solid and heavy, his laughter rumbling through the forming world like distant thunder. He was earth, but not yet soil, not yet stone. He was potential fertility, the promise of growth, the deep stillness beneath movement. His presence gave things somewhere to rest. Nut followed, vast and luminous. She was sky before the sky knew it was sky. Her body arched endlessly, her form stretching beyond comprehension. Where she moved, stars would someday cling to her skin. But for now, she was simply expanse. Endless, sheltering, unknowable. From the moment they became aware of one another, Geb and Nut were drawn together. Not out of desire alone, but out of recognition. Earth and sky are incomplete without each other. One longs upward, the other leans down. Their closeness was instinctive, unavoidable, and absolute. They pressed together, Nut's body lying directly upon Geb, her skin touching his surface everywhere at once. There was no gap between them, no air, no space. Shu watched this union with growing concern. For while love flourished, creation stalled. Nothing could grow between Geb and Nut. There was no room for movement, no space for life to take root. The world, though full of potential, was trapped in an eternal embrace. Adam observed in silence. He had learned by now that creation did not always require force, but sometimes it required separation. With deliberate resolve, Adam commanded Shu to act. Shu did not want to intervene. He was air, not division. He was connection, not rupture. But he understood necessity. With steady strength, Shu placed his hands between Geb and Nut and began to lift. Nut resisted at first, clinging to Geb. Her body curved tightly around him. Geb reached upward, his arms straining, his voice shaking the forming world with grief and longing. But Shu persisted. Slowly, painfully, space opened. Nut rose higher and higher, her body stretching into a vast arch above the world. Shu held her aloft, arms locked, breath steady, becoming the pillar between sky and earth. Geb remained below, his body pressed into the forming land, reaching upward forever but never again touching her. The separation was complete, and in that space the world exhaled. Air flowed for the first time. Wind learned how to move. Moisture drifted. Light spread. Life, though not yet born, found room to imagine itself. Nut wept as she rose, her tears becoming stars scattered across her body. Geb laughed even through his sorrow, his joy rippling through the earth as fertile energy. Shu stood between them, unwavering. This was his purpose now, to hold the sky apart from the earth, to maintain the balance that allowed existence to continue. Nut, arched high above, became the great canopy of the heavens. Each night she would stretch herself over the world, watching silently. Each day she would endure the long separation, carrying both grief and promise in her vast form. Geb, below, became the foundation. His body would one day break into mountains and valleys. From his skin would grow plants. From his depths would come stone, metal, and memory. The universe had learned another lesson. Love without space becomes suffocation. Separation, when done with care, becomes creation. But the story did not pause there. Nut, though lifted beyond touch, was still bound by fate. Within her vast body stirred life waiting to be born. Children pressed against her interior, restless and luminous, seeking entry into the world below. Ra, now blazing as the eye returned, watched this carefully. Ra had become ruler of the sky, sailing across Nut's body each day in his solar bark. He saw everything, or so he believed. Power had sharpened his vision, but also his fear. A prophecy reached him, whispered by time itself. Nut would give birth to children who would change the order of the world. Among them would be forces that challenged stability, authority, and the calm reign of the sun. Ra, wary of upheaval, made a decree. Nut would not give birth on any day of the year. At the time, the year consisted of 360 days. Each was governed, counted, controlled. Ra believed his command absolute. No day, no matter how small, would permit Nut to bring forth her children. Nut was trapped. Her body swelled with unborn gods, their presence pressing against her vast interior. She arched in pain, stars flickering with her discomfort. Geb below rumbled in sympathy, helpless to ease her burden. Shu could do nothing. His duty was to hold, not to alter fate. So Nut turned to Thoth. Thoth was not loud. He did not rule with force or fire. He was wisdom, language, measurement, and quiet ingenuity. He listened more than he spoke. He observed patterns others missed. Thoth saw a flaw in Ra's decree. The year belonged to Ra, but time itself did not. Thoth challenged the moon to a game of chance, not out of greed, but precision. With each victory, Thoth won a fraction of the moon's light. Small pieces, barely noticeable. Over time, these fragments accumulated. 5 days, days that did not belong to the year, days outside Ra's authority, days unclaimed. When Nut realized what Thoth had done, relief rippled across the heavens. On these 5 days, she was free. The first of these days dawned, and Nut gave birth to Osiris. Osiris emerged calm and luminous, his presence bringing a sense of order and quiet dignity. Even as an infant god, he carried gravity. The universe seemed to steady itself around him. On the second day, Isis was born. Isis was radiant with intelligence and devotion. Her eyes held understanding beyond her years. Magic flowed through her effortlessly, not as spectacle, but as precision. She observed before acting, remembered before speaking. On the third day came Set. Set was powerful, restless, and fierce. His energy crackled, unpredictable and intense. He was not evil by nature, but he was disruption. Storms, deserts, movement, and force lived within him. The fourth day brought Nephthys. Quiet and shadowed, Nephthys was guardian of thresholds. She understood transitions, mourning, and protection. She stood where things ended and began again. On the 5th day, Horus the Elder was born. A god of the distant sky, watcher and witness, Horus carried vision and authority. He did not interfere often, but when he did, it mattered. With their birth, the world grew more complex. These were not merely gods. They were embodiments of principles that would shape existence. Order and magic, chaos and transition, life and watchfulness. Ra watched them carefully. The prophecy had begun, and Nut, exhausted but relieved, stretched herself across the sky once more, her children now part of the world below. Night fell. Ra prepared his bark for its first true journey through darkness. And far beneath the heavens, the earth shifted, readying itself for a reign that would teach humanity how to live, how to die, and how to remember. The age of Osiris was approaching.
Chapter 3: Osiris and the Shape of a Living World. When Osiris first set foot upon the land of Egypt, the earth recognized him. This was not metaphor. The soil itself responded. Where his feet pressed into the ground, the dust settled differently, as though relieved to finally be understood. The Nile, still young in its habits, shifted its currents subtly, learning where it would someday overflow and where it would recede. Even the air seemed to slow in his presence, as if listening. Osiris did not arrive as a conqueror. He did not demand obedience, nor did he announce himself with thunder or flame. His power was quieter than that. It was the kind that persuades, rather than commands. The kind that makes things want to align. At the time, humanity was scattered and uncertain. People lived close to the river but did not yet understand it. They hunted when they could, gathered what they found, and buried their dead without ceremony or memory. Life was survival. Death was disappearance. Osiris changed this. He walked among humans not as a distant god, but as a teacher. He showed them how to read the river's moods, how to plant when the waters receded, how to harvest without exhausting the land, how to store grain against the lean months, how to share labor so no one starved alone. Under Osiris's guidance, the Nile became more than water. It became rhythm, flood, retreat, growth, harvest. Time itself began to take on shape. People learned to mark seasons, to anticipate rather than react. Villages formed. Paths became roads. Stories were told and remembered. The dead were no longer abandoned to the sand. They were wrapped, honored, and laid to rest with care. Their names spoken so they would not vanish entirely. This was Osiris's true gift, continuity. And beside him stood Isis. Isis did not rule by decree, nor did she merely echo her husband's authority. Her power was different. Where Osiris taught structure, Isis taught connection. Where he brought order to the land, she brought meaning to the invisible threads that bound people to one another. She was the goddess of magic, but magic in this age was not spectacle. It was knowledge, language, the understanding that words, when spoken with precision and intent, could alter reality. Isis listened more than she spoke. She watched how people moved, how they feared, how they loved. She learned their names. She remembered their stories. Her presence reassured, without smothering, strengthened, without dominating. Together, Osiris and Isis ruled a kingdom that did not need walls. And that unsettled Set. Set had never belonged easily anywhere. Born of Nut on a stolen day, he carried the rawness of the desert within him. Where Osiris was fertile black soil, Set was red sand and storm. Where Osiris stabilized, Set disrupted. This did not make Set evil, but it did make him restless. Set watched Egypt grow orderly and prosperous, watched people sleep without fear, watched rituals replace chaos. And something in him recoiled. The stillness felt like stagnation. The peace felt like weakness. He wanted movement, change, recognition. And in Osiris's calm authority, Set saw not a brother, but an obstacle. He noticed how people praised Osiris, how Isis was revered, how the land itself seemed to favor them. Set's power was no less real, but it was different. Storms are noticed only when they strike. Deserts are appreciated only when crossed. Set felt invisible, and invisibility curdles. At first, Set's resentment was quiet. He tested boundaries, questioned decisions, mocked rituals. He framed his dissent as concern, as realism, as strength. But Osiris did not rise to it. He listened. He answered calmly. He acknowledged Set's role without yielding to his agitation. And this, more than any insult, deepened Set's fury. Because Set did not want balance, he wanted dominance. Nephthys, Set's wife, watched all of this in silence. She stood at the edges of gatherings, observing rather than participating. She saw the growing fracture and understood its danger. Nephthys was the goddess of liminal spaces, of thresholds and endings, of the quiet moments between states. She sensed that something was shifting, that the harmony of Egypt was fragile despite its apparent strength. But she did not yet know how to intervene. Horus the Elder, distant and aloof, watched from the sky. His vision extended far, but his involvement remained minimal. He was a watcher, not a ruler. A witness, not an actor. Time passed. Prosperity continued, and Set planned. He did not rush. Chaos, when wielded effectively, is patient. Set observed Osiris closely. He learned his habits, his routines, his trust. Osiris was open, generous, and unguarded. He did not suspect betrayal from blood.
Set understood this weakness well. The feast was Set's idea. He presented it as a celebration, a gathering of gods and nobles, music, wine, laughter, a night of unity.
No one questioned it. Osiris welcomed it. The chest was Set's masterpiece.
Carved with precision, decorated with care, fitted exactly to Osiris's dimensions, Set announced it as a game, a gift to whoever fit inside it perfectly. There was laughter as others tried and failed. The mood was light, relaxed. Osiris stepped inside without hesitation. And in that moment, the world changed. The lid slammed shut, the locks sealed. Molten metal was poured along the seams, hardening instantly. The music stopped. Before anyone could react, Set's followers carried the chest to the Nile and cast it into the water. Order was submerged. The Nile accepted the chest and carried it away, silent and impartial. The river does not judge, it only moves. When the news reached Isis, she did not scream. She did not collapse. She did not curse Set or beg the gods. She became still. Stillness in her was focus. She donned the garments of mourning and began her search, not with armies, not with force, with patience and listening. She followed rumors, whispers, dreams. She asked the birds. She watched the currents. She traced the Nile's path far beyond Egypt's borders. When she found the chest, it was lodged within a great tree, grown around it as if protecting it. The king of that land had cut the tree and used it as a pillar in his palace, unaware of what lay inside. Isis infiltrated the palace quietly. She reclaimed the chest. She opened it,
And she wept.
but Set was not finished. He found Osiris's body and tore it apart, scattering the pieces across the land. A final act of rage meant to ensure there would be no return. Isis did not surrender. She searched again, gathering every fragment. With Nephthys at her side and Anubis guiding the rites, she reassembled Osiris as completely as possible. Through magic and devotion, she restored him long enough to conceive a child. Horus. Osiris could not remain among the living. He passed into the Duat, becoming Lord of the Dead, ruler of the afterlife. He transformed death from oblivion into judgment, from fear into transition. And Isis, knowing Set would destroy her child if he found him, fled into the marshes. There, among reeds and insects and hidden channels, she raised Horus in secrecy. She protected him with spells, with vigilance, with unyielding love. Scorpions bit him, serpents threatened him. Each time, Isis healed him, reinforcing the truth that survival is an act of will. As Horus grew, so did the tension in the world. Set ruled the land, but his reign was harsh. Storms battered crops. Fear returned. Order fractured. The people remembered Osiris not as a lost golden age, and somewhere in the reeds, a child learned to watch, learned to wait, learned that balance does not come from rage, but from precision. The world held its breath, because a reckoning was coming.